I'm going to begin by quickly sketching in this figure here. There's a figure in the foreground. I'm doing this really rough. I'll skip ahead and then show you a more refined version. But right now I just want to get something down here very quickly. So here are the basic forms that are being used. And he's holding a gun, examining the gun. He's wearing a hat. He's someone from the future. And back here there's this vehicle. And it's something like a tank, but more advanced. And a horizon line. This video isn't about drawing. It's about showing you how you can create emphasis through color contrast at the focal point. I'm going to add color and then skip ahead and show you what the rough finished color sketch looks like. So what I'm going to do is just quickly add a blue-green over the whole drawing like this. And this is called a toner. For those of you who aren't familiar with toners, it's a base color that you put down to get rid of the white surface so that you have a color that you can relate color to as well as values. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump ahead and show you what the finished rough color sketch looks like. And here is the finished rough color sketch. It's not a finished painting, just a rough sketch that I'm going to use to show you how you can get a painting to have more punch. The predominant color in this painting is green, and I'm going to pick up a color from the sky and show you. It's a green, but it's a grade green. When you have a color such as this green that predominates the painting, it's a good idea to add a color accent that is the complementary of the predominant color within the painting. So if you have green like I do, the complementary color would be a red. Using the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, also create strong color contrast like complementary colors do, although the color contrast is even stronger with complementary colors. And I'm going to show you an example of the use of primary colors for a color accent. So let's say your painting is primarily yellow, like this. The color accent that you would then use is one of the primary colors, which is red. So I'm going to add that over here. So maybe this is a bird, a red bird. And I could add some branches that he's sitting on, standing on. This is really rough, but I think you get the idea. So here's a branch coming up like that, and he's sitting on that branch. Add some dark value right there where his beak is. And you can see that the eye immediately goes to that little red bird. It's a strong color accent, a discord. Color accents are also referred to as discords. A discord is a very strong contrast within the painting. I added a suggestion of some leaves. So the eye is attracted to the bird immediately and stays on the bird. And even this little rough sketch here has quite a bit of impact because of this strong color contrast of the red and the yellow. The two primary colors are contrasting strongly with each other, and thereby the eye is attracted to the small spot of red within the larger area of yellow. Usually, when the artist adds a color accent like this, he or she will repeat that color somewhere else. For example, if I added a red somewhere else, but that repetition of that color accent is then added so that the color is not as saturated or as intense as the one that is being used as a color accent or discord. So this red that I added here, you can see, is more desaturated and not as intense as this red is. So therefore, this red doesn't attract as much attention. But in a case like this, when you just have one dominating spot of color, you don't repeat that accent color anywhere else. You just have it appear on one object like this. When this is done, then the eye is irresistibly attracted to that spot of color, to that accent color. And it's important that that accent color be kept small in size. Don't make it a really large color. Like, for example, if I made that hat red like this, the entire hat, that would be overdoing it. These accent colors, or discord accent colors, should be allocated to smaller shapes or smaller areas within the painting. For example, right here, I could add that red accent color and then make it a little brighter on this side where more of the light is hitting this part of his clothing. And you can see how effective that accent color is within this painting. It really gives more punch to the painting, makes it even more interesting looking. Usually in a painting, every color must relate to another color so that no color appears isolated. But in cases like this, where you use the single accent color, you don't relate it to any other colors. Therefore, it is referred to as a discord. A discord is a contrast that doesn't really relate to any other part of the painting, and therefore it is called a discord. It is not in harmony with anything else within the painting, and because of that, it really stands out and really has a lot of power. If you keep the accent color small enough in size, you can get away with using that color without relating it to another color like it, or a color that is analogous to it. You can get away with having a color that is isolated from the rest of the color. But as soon as you add it to a larger shape, a larger area like I showed you, then you need to relate it to a similar color. Then it can no longer be an isolated color. But when you use it in a small amount, like I'm showing you, then you can get away with just having that one color and not relating it to another color like it or similar to it. Those colors that have a high luminosity, such as yellow, orange, and red, those colors in that high luminosity range, they exert the strongest attraction and therefore work very well in establishing a strong color accent within a painting. Matter of fact, a spot of red can dominate a far greater area of black or white. So if you have a red that is of a high saturation, and you have black and white areas within the painting as well, the eye is going to be attracted to that small spot of saturated red more than it will be to those larger areas of black and white. What I'm talking about here comes down to color design. You need to know color design in order to be able to really create color paintings that grab the attention and hold the attention of the viewer. Beginners have no clue about this. And unless you know about this and are able to apply it to your paintings are always going to lack that extra punch that you can give them when you add a small, strong color accent like I'm showing you here. It's this size contrast. Small size in relation to a very large size that makes all the difference between a color accent that really has some impact and one that doesn't, in which the artist made the color accent too large in size, like I showed you before with the hat. You can see how this color accent here loses much of its impact when I add that red to another part of the picture, like the hat. You see that red here no longer attracts as much attention as it did before, and the whole picture doesn't have the same impact that it did before I added the red to the hat. Now that I remove the red from the hat, I think you can see that the painting gains in impact. Adding a strong color accent like this is a way through which emphasis is achieved within a painting. And that emphasis, that strong color accent, needs to be placed at the center of interest, like I did here. Center of interest is the man's head. And this red accent helps to draw the attention to the head. When you're using this kind of color accent, remember that the color accent needs to be kept small in size. You need to employ size contrast, very small to very large. A color which appears in an extremely small area like this does in fact assume a greater prominence than the same color in more balanced areas. I'm going to do another little quick sketch here like this one. And this time, instead of a yellow background, I'm going to add a green background, similar to my rough sketch on the left there, that large sketch. And then I'll just add the green over the entire surface like this. And then just in a very rough way, I'm going to add a black swan. So something like this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is just a rough sketch, just to point out to you what this would look like when I add a strong color accent. Now, since the background is green, as I mentioned earlier, a good accent color would be the complementary to green, and as you know, it is red because I added red over here, which is complementary to the green that predominates this painting. So therefore, what I could do is I could add a bright red beak to this swan. And that's my accent color, or my discord color. I'm not repeating it anywhere else. And you see how much impact this little rough sketch has, just because I added that small red accent. And remember, these accents need to be small. They gain their power through their small size. If you look back here where these trees are, I need to lighten them a bit more. add a little more atmospheric perspective, as it's called, and that pushes them further back in space. Another thing about these accent colors is that the accent color must contrast with both the dominant and subordinate colors. There will, however, be a different degree of contrast between the dominant color and the subordinate color. The color accent will contrast more strongly with the dominant color and less strongly with the subordinate color. If you look at the color on the face here, where the light is striking the face, I'm going to pick that color up, and you can see that that color is an orange color. And orange is just one color swatch away from red on the color wheel. So there isn't much contrast of hue or color between the red and the orange color. So here's an example of how much less the accent color can contrast with a subordinate color. However, the subordinate color could be a color that contrasts to a much greater degree than what I have here. I'll give you an example of a subordinate color that will contrast more than the orange color that I have here. So I'm going to pick up the color of the sky, go to my color picker, and instead of green, I'm going to move the slider up toward blue-green. Something like that, maybe. And then add it to the sky. I'm going to reduce the intensity a bit more. So something like this. And then a lighter color for some of the clouds there in the sky. So here's an example of a subordinate color that contrasts more with the red accent color than the orange color here on the man's face. But the red contrasts more with the green. So therefore, as I said before, the accent color will contrast more strongly with the dominant color, which in this case is the green, but then less strong with the subordinate color, which in this case is the blue-green. Blue-green is right next to green on the color wheel. It's not directly opposite of the red color, which the green is, and therefore the green contrasts more strongly with the red than the blue-green does. So here you see an example of the color accent contrasting with both the subordinate and the dominant color, but contrasting somewhat less with the subordinate color, but still, even though it is a subordinate color, the contrast is still strong between the accent color and the subordinate color. But the strongest color contrast, of course, as I mentioned, is between the red and the green, since they are complementary colors on the color wheel. Therefore, it's important for you to learn the colors of the color wheel and where they are situated on the color wheel. The color accent will contrast in terms of not only the hue, but also its temperature and the value of the accent also. So if you are painting a picture in a low key and you want an accent, you can add a light color that has a warm temperature if the predominant color is cool and is of a light value. That accent will then stand out and become a discord. The accent color is sometimes called a spice color because, like a pinch of spice in a recipe that gives the whole meal a rich flavor, the accent color adds flavor and spark to your painting.